So, a couple minutes on Bible study. Some of you already know this, so I'll make it as brief as possible. What we Christians call the Old Testament, of course the Jews call it the Hebrew Scriptures, really begins with Abraham realizing that there is only one true God. This is 4,000 years ago. Before that, people had many gods. But Abraham somehow believed that there's only one God. And that's when God called Abraham and all the Jews as his chosen people. However, nothing was written down. You know, there were no scribes and tape recorders and so on. So this story of God's revelation to the Jewish people was passed on by word of mouth from generation to generation for hundreds of years, maybe 1,000 years, until the time of David, where they started writing it down. Now, during that period, there developed schools of thought. A school of thought is a bunch of scholars getting together and talking about all of this. So they realized, what happened before Abraham? How did the world get here? How did we get here? Where did sin come from? Where do all the languages come from? So those schools of thought developed theories about certain things. So two schools of thought developed a theory on how creation took place. Now, when they got the Bible in written form, the people didn't decide which theory was correct. They put both in. That's why chapter 1 of Genesis is one story of creation where God created the world in 7 days, and He created the world and then the plants and the animals and then human beings as the epitome of God's image. Chapter 2 is a different story of creation. That's what you heard today. God created the world, created man, then God created the animals, and then God created the woman out of the man's rib. Now again, remember, we Catholics do not read the Bible literally. We do not read it as a science book or a history book. We read it as a book of wisdom. Now, some people take the Bible literally. I talked to a person once who actually believed that men have one less rib than women. Got it? Wonderful old story about the second chapter of Genesis, about God noticing He created Adam, man, and then the animals, and He noticed how lonely Adam was. So God said to Adam, I'm going to create a helpmate for you. She's going to be beautiful all the time. You'll never see her without makeup on. She will do everything you say, and she'll do it perfectly. She will give you whatever you want whenever you want it. She'll never have a headache. She'll take care of the children. She'll clean the house. Her cooking will be perfect every time. Nothing will ever be burned, and she'll never make anything that you don't like. Boy, Adam's eyes got as big as saucers. And he said, well, I'm guessing, God, this is going to cost me something. Yeah, God said it's going to cost you the use of an arm and a leg. And God said, well, give me what you can if I give you a rib. Now, my little meditation. As I said at the beginning, there is nothing that makes us more nervous than talking about marriage and divorce, and then remarriage, because it touches all of us. Some of you might have gone through it. Some of you, maybe your parents were divorced. Maybe you know somebody. Every family has divorce somewhere in the line. And so that's what we're dealing with today. Now, a lot of priests won't even talk about this, but, you know, I rush in where the fools fear to tread. So one of the problems is our church is so organized that we have decided who can go to communion and who can't. And that's where the rub comes. Now, let me make it clear. Our church does not prohibit divorce. If you are married and get divorced, you can still go to communion. You're still a full member of the church. Years ago, that was not believed, but The priests and nuns said that to scare people. But if you're married and divorced, you're still a part of the church, you still go to communion. The kicker is if you marry again. If you're in a second marriage, the church says you're not supposed to go to communion. To me, it makes no sense. Because if you marry and divorce, and then you kill your spouse, you can go to confession and go to communion. So, now, what adds to that problem is in our society, we have marriage on two levels. It's a civil institution, you got to get a license, and we believe in the Catholic Church it's a sacramental union. Now, the problem is we have put those two together. Because in our culture, if you marry civilly, then again, you're not supposed to go to communion. It's only when you marry civilly and sacramentally that you're still part of the church. It's not the same in Germany. In Germany, you've got to have two ceremonies. First, you got to get married civilly by a magistrate. But you're still allowed to go to communion. And then when you as a couple are ready to join yourself in God, the gospel, what God has joined, we cannot separate, then you come to the church and you sacramentalize it. And that forms the sacrament of marriage. Is every couple that comes to the church to get married, they want to get married, of course, but are they ready for a sacramental marriage? Are they ready to be joined in God? I don't think so. So many couples I work with could care less about the spiritual end of the marriage. They're concerned about the dress and the venue and the music and the whatever. They're not ready. But yet we force them into that situation. That's what we're dealing with today. That's why in the church, if a couple gets married and gets divorced, they can come back to the church and have us analyze, were you really married in God's eyes? And so many marriages are they never get to that point. And we say, no, they weren't married by God, and that's what we call an annulment. You probably have heard about that. Now, for people that marry, how do you marry in God? What's the sign? There's two things. The first sign is if you're willing to serve your spouse all the time. Again, the challenge we have in our culture is a very me-centered. What can I get out of this? The message of Christ is unselfish love. Not what I can get, what can I give? That's why I like that first reading, because God created a helpmate. That's what the spouses are supposed to be for each other. And it's a wonderful practical thing. You can ask yourself in every situation, at this moment, am I helping the situation? If you're frustrated and lose your temper, does that help? No. But that's what marriage is. Each spouse constantly must ask themselves, am I helping the situation? Am I helping my spouse? That's not easy. Because sometimes we get sick of doing that because we want our needs settled. That's the first thing. The second thing is to have a marriage in God, you have to pray together. Together. Most of us pray every day. But those of you who are married, do you pray every day with your spouse? If you don't do that, you cannot be married in God. And prayer is so scary. Making love, we expose our bodies. But the more intimate thing is prayer because we expose our souls to our mate. And don't make it hard. If you don't do it, all you have to do is join hands and say the Our Father. Do something to join yourself in God. That's what we're celebrating. That's the ideal, the goal in which we all hope to live. To have that relationship. Woman came and told me, she said, congratulate me. Today I'm celebrating 15 years of a happy marriage. I said, great. She said, well, we got married 40 years ago. I want to end this. I don't know how many of you read the comics. Pearls Before Swine by Steve Pastis. A while back, he wrote a script on the 6 stages of marriage. I want to end with this, if it works on the video. See what stage you're in. The 6 stages of marriage. This is Steve Pastis. You're the greatest thing that ever happened to me. You're not as great as I thought. You need to be changed. You can't be changed. I accept you as you are. You're the greatest thing that ever happened to me. Any stage you're in, ask yourself, am I helping? And let's pray together.